Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, I have Zach Gordon. Zach, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. We've been planning this for a long time. So a real pleasure, Jason. Thanks for all you've done, and thanks for inviting me on.
Wow, that happened fast. Oh, I just did that to myself. Good. Well, I'm gonna have to fix that. Okay.
Nailed it. Off to a great.
I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. So Zach, I have been following your work for a while. You're doing really cool things in like across the JavaScript and WordPress kind of boundary, if you can call it that. And for those of us who aren't familiar with your work, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of your background, what you are, what you do, and all that?
Sure. Well, I'm an educator by training and craft. So I taught high school, taught college, university level, taught some in-person boot camps for a while, and a number of years ago started at a company, Treehouse, which was like a leading online learning site, really cool space, and did all their WordPress courses. So that's when I began to be siloed in the WordPress world. But I've taught everything from robotics to JavaScript, Drupal to Joomla to .NET, just all over the place. And I've really found a sweet home with WordPress. I've been involved in the community for since WordPress 2, like 10 plus years now, easily. And since WordPress kind of started this JavaScript focus, I've been focused on teaching JavaScript to WordPress developers. So vanilla JavaScript, and now that React has come into WordPress, and we have this whole Gutenberg project with a new drag and drop editor.
Yeah.
And we have GraphQL taking off and Gatsby taking off. There's just been my and a lot of coming. I did just start a new a little bit later, but what we're talking about the Gatsby and WordPress, and just a lot of work in general with it. So really excited to be here because I've learned so much from your videos as well. There's good stuff I couldn't figure out or find on the internet. And lo and behold, digging into a rabbit hole, I find a video from Jason. I'm like, oh, here's how to do this. So thank you again for everything you've been doing. It's been really cool to see. And congrats on all the success.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Cool. So we it looked like we had a little bit of a lag there with the we lost you for a hot second, but we got 95% of what you just said.
Good. My apologies. Yeah, I'm in a teeny home in a canyon, so Wi-Fi here is a little spotty, but hopefully it'll all come through.
Yeah, no, it looks like we should be able to make this work. All right, so one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, why I was so excited to do this show with you, is because, like you said, like WordPress is making a big push toward like JavaScript, like between the Gutenberg editor and the ability to go headless, whether that's through the WordPress API or through using Jason Ball's WP GraphQL. We now have the ability to like use WordPress as a content management system without having to use it as a front end. And that opens the door to the Jamstack, which is something that, surprise, I'm actually really into. And so I think that what's really cool here is that it's no longer this kind of big ambitious project to run WordPress on the Jamstack. It's now actually something that is, it almost feels like it's starting to become community best practice. Like that's the way you should really consider building WordPress. And I find that really, really exciting. And so what I thought would be fun today is actually to dig into how you do that for real. Like, how do you migrate an existing WordPress site to the Jamstack? And so I have a friend site, my friend Nate Green. I've built his site years ago. It's a WordPress site. And I thought that it would be fun to see if we can like make it into a Jamstack site. Now, fair warning, I haven't looked at this site since probably 2017. So I made sure that my login still worked, but like I don't remember where the files are stored or where things are hosted. So this is going to be an adventure. So if you're ready, we can flip over. And I know you also wanted to show. We'll have a couple websites up here. But so you just started a new job, right? You're at Stratic now. Did I lose you?
Lost you for a second. Can you hear me okay? I think I'm good now.
Yeah. So what I was saying is I just switched over to the web view, and we're looking at the Stratic site. So you just started here, right?
Yeah, so I just started here, and this is really exciting for me because, I'm an educator first, and trying to help the community has been what I really enjoy and been able to support myself on. But teaching JavaScript to WordPress developers is a niche in a niche. And then teaching Gatsby and, headless WordPress to WordPress developers is a niche within a niche within a niche. And so I really began to feel that in order for headless to move forward for WordPress, we need to bring all the users up as well. So Stratic is a really cool company. They're a hosting provider that hosts your WordPress site, and with a click of a button, it will convert it into a Jamstack site. Now, it's not using Gatsby specifically, but it is giving the same end result as you would get with a tool like Gatsby, but it's for users who don't want to build all of that. So my job here is going to be on pushing education forward, educating people about what headless is, about what the Jamstack is, about what the content mesh is, because for a lot of WordPress users, they come from this monolith system of everything should be a WordPress plugin, but we exist in a content mesh world now where we're kind of using the best tools for the job and mixing and matching to create the best overall experience. So bringing up education of this, and I can easily see 30, they say WordPress is 30% of the web. I can see 30% of WordPress over the next coming years becoming headless, becoming Jamstack, either through a service like Stratic or developers helping people build out stuff with Gatsby. So really excited about that. And the cool thing is you could use Stratic to build a Gatsby site. So you still need WordPress somewhere, but it raises this question of, should WordPress stay online when Gatsby isn't talking to it? So one of the things that Stratic does is we take your site offline when you're not editing it. So once you have that static site out there, there's no reason for that database to be exposed if you don't need it. So getting some cool security benefits there. So as we're going, it's something to consider that, like, yeah, we've got this super secure, great Gatsby site, but if your WordPress site is still sitting on a shared host somewhere, completely open and vulnerable, you might have some risks there that you're not taking into full awareness. So yeah, thanks for bringing up Stratic. I'm really
and then you also run JavaScript for WordPress.
For my computer.
Oh. Wait. Had him? Lost him? Boy, this episode's going to get real interesting if I've got to teach myself. I am going to use this moment to let the chat know. First of all, welcome, chat. Thank you all for showing up. It's hopping in here. I really appreciate y'all coming out. I see some new faces in the chat, so hello. Thank you for stopping by. And also, there are some fun things that I've done in the chat. So we've got some of our tried and true sound effects, so we can play with goofy stuff like this. But I also added some new ones. So this is a clip.
And that's just not something I'm willing to do.
That's a clip from Gant Laborde when he was on the show. We've also got a new one that longtime viewers of the show are going to love.
Show me potato salad.
That one still makes me very happy. And what else do we have in here? We have... Oh yeah, if you are telling me how to do something and you have the answer and I'm not paying attention... you can also do this now. Zach, you are still frozen. I don't know if you can hear us, but maybe this will just be. This is actually an opportune time for this. So yep, always a good one. Yeah, he's not frozen. He's just sitting very still. Also, if we're gonna need that, here's a new one. This is the new
All
one.
right, I think I need a adult supervision here.
Also, it looks like I need to fix my overlay because I think I hard coded something. Well, oh no, he's gone. Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, let's switch over to solo, and I'm gonna just look at this site, and hopefully we'll see Zach back in just a second here. Let me wiggle my way into the center of the frame. So this is my friend Nate Green's site, and Nate is he's a journalist, he's a writer, he works in fitness. He's written for a bunch of companies, like he's got some feature length articles in Men's Health, and he's worked with all sorts of fun stuff. But this is his blog, which is old. We built this a few years back, and he hasn't been doing a lot with it, but we wanted to make it more accessible for him to use. And right now he's going in through WordPress and kind of doing all of that manually. But so we thought that to make this site a little bit snappier, to upgrade the experience a little bit on the for people who are using it, and also just for his ability to work with it, we were going to update WordPress so that he's got the new experience, which we probably won't do on stream, honestly, because I haven't updated WordPress in a long time. I think this is on like 4.5 or something like that. Let's see. This is the dashboard. Yeah, 4.5.3. So this is way out of date, right? We haven't, I'm 100% sure that something is going to go wrong when I try to do this because I haven't used it in a very long time. And I just don't feel like that's going to be a fun stream to watch me trying to dig for FTP credentials for wherever I put this. Okay, I'm still missing Zach, so we may have to reschedule. Let's see if I can. Oh, here he is. Let's get him. Hey, let's go back to here. There you are. All right, man.
Hi.
I was filling time like a pro. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, man. Keep the wheels spinning. I got new tables here. Hopefully we're good now. Cha-cha-cha. Jamstack. That's me. Develop. Waiting for WordPress. We got this.
All right. So I was just giving a quick tour. This is the site that I thought it would be fun to transition over. This is my friend Nate. Nate and I have been friends for years, like to the point that I have a blog post about this called Best Friends. Look at this guy. Look at this guy, Nate Green. All right, so we've known each other since we were like 10 years old. But so anyways, so if we want to get started, like what my goal is for this site is we want to move Nate over to a Jamstack frontend. He's got some ideas for what he wants to do with the site. He really wants to go a little more minimal, a lot snappier, and just make his publishing process a little bit smoother. So if we want to do that, where do we start?
Oh my God, I love this question. I got your answer, buddy. Every single time we start a new Gatsby and WordPress project, I start with two things. I install WP GraphQL and I install WP Graphical. And these two will create a GraphQL endpoint in WordPress. And the tricky thing is we can't do it from within plugins. So we need to actually go to the WP GraphQL in GitHub and download and upload them from there. So I could send you the link to speed it up, but if you just search for WP GraphQL,
so I think
we'll get there just as fast.
I think we immediately hit a non-starter then, because I'm relatively certain that in order to get to the code of this site, I'm going to have to do some archaeology.
I think you can upload a plugin from here, right? I think you should be able to go to plugins, add new, and upload it.
I think I might have done some security stuff because I'm not seeing my add new button.
I'm not seeing it either.
I think I put this on WP Engine, and I think that means that I have to do code, which means I think maybe we start with a different WordPress site and we'll go through the process, and then I'll do this later for Nate. All right.
Definitely. So I have kind of a. You want me to share local add new? Nope. Yeah. Nope.
Let me check what role do I have? All users. No, I'm an administrator. Like this is, I'm pretty sure this is. If I change my role to developer, what happens? Now can I change plugins? No, still can't do it. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this has to be done through. Right.
Well,
yeah.
All
right.
No problem. I'm going to send you a link to a site I just keep up and running, and we could use that if you want. It's kind of a little bit configured.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I could add you as a user here. Can I safely add stuff here in the chat without asking everybody the password? It's going to get complicated if everybody tries to log in.
If you send it in, you can like send it in Twitter or something so that it's private.
Okay. I will do that right now then.
Okay. And I'm going to answer a question in the chat. So not sure. Is it Yanni Rocks? I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. So the question is, it's like a multi-part question. Is it still Jamstack if you are hosting a backend? And so I think the answer to that question is like, yeah, right. So what makes it Jamstack is that what goes to the end user is a static asset. So that doesn't necessarily mean static content. Like things can be dynamic in static assets, but you're effectively not reliant on a server. So what we're doing with WordPress when we move it to a Jamstack model is we're decoupling the data from the generated site. And so what that means for us is that we are, let me copy this link. So I'm going to come over here. Is that going to work? Yes. Okay. So when we are moving a site like this to the Jamstack, we're making it so that the WordPress backend doesn't need to be up, which is what Zach was talking about with static. We make it so that the backend. Oh crap! What happened? Let me check if. Oh, I get it. Okay, sorry. Twitter formatting did weird stuff with that password. There we go. All right. But yeah, so what we're trying to do here is we're making it so that this backend is where someone logs in to manage data, but this is the same thing as if you were using like a third-party software as a service. Like Gatsby is built on this idea of the content mesh, right? And this is, Zach, you mentioned this as well. So if you want to jump in here and kind of talk a little bit about this, I feel like this is like a core concept, right? Of like what makes the Jamstack so powerful.
Yeah, I think that what we're presenting to folks is decoupled from WordPress, as you said. So we're presenting the raw HTML files that are built. We query the WordPress database during the build process, build that all out, and get that out there. So even if your WordPress site is still up and running, your Gatsby site is decoupled from it. Now it gets a little bit more complicated in this regard because part of the Jamstack is also all those JavaScript calls that are making live calls everywhere, either through like an API, usually through an API of some sort or some embedded code that we have there. So we could still write back to that WordPress database if we don't have it locked down. Just like if you throw in discuss comments or you're using the Shopify API or you have one of these other headless CMSs, at some point, your chances are you might be writing back and having that two-way dynamic conversation. So like you said accurately, like a static site or a Gatsby site, a Jamstack site is not necessarily static in that it can have dynamic content. But yeah, you could definitely use WordPress and still be in the Jamstack. And in fact, I'd say that most complex, robust Gatsby sites are going to have some database set up somewhere, storing something. If you don't have it all flat files, which is possible to do a lot, but comment forms or contact forms, or maybe you have comments stored somewhere that isn't flat file. There's oftentimes some other database component that's still, we still get to call it the Jamstack, even if it's in the content mesh world like that. I feel like I'm kind of repeating things now, but hopefully that's clear for this person, because they ask a great question, and the short answer is yes, it's still qualifies.
Yeah, and really, it kind of comes down to like a philosophical differentiation, right? Because what we're saying is, like, we're doing all the same things that we used to do, but what we're changing is that instead of all the code being monolithic and part of the same app, like you've got the whole app in one repo, what we're doing is we're taking out parts of it and moving them around. So now our front end is independent of everything else. Once we've built the site, we can turn off all the databases, turn off all the servers, turn off all the third-party services, shut down WordPress, and that site, that generated asset, that's permanent. It's there and it's generated and it's done. And that gives us a lot of benefits, like the first being a lot of security. It's not connected to the database. It's not connected to a server. If you get 1 million visitors, it's not going to go down from the server being overloaded. But it also gives us like really cool things like snapshots in history. At Netlify, we do this thing that we call atomic deploys, where every time you build your site, we can hold on to that build. And then if your next build, you notice that you don't like something about it, you just click the previous build and say, no, I want to use this one instead. And you just roll back. So you get this idea of like time travel, which with a server driven site, that's really, really hard because everything is built in multiple places. So that's kind of the idea of, and I think the major benefit here, and why this is worth digging into, is it really does give you like all of the good things about using something like WordPress, because you still get to use the content editing experience. You still get to dive in and learn all of the, or use all of the power tools for editors, but then you also get to use all these modern web development flows, and you get these bonuses for developers where you get the security, you get to use React or Vue or whatever you want really to build that front end, and you get like a Git driven workflow. You get to use something like Netlify or Static or whatever that lets you use your tools, and it removes that kind of tension between, like, I don't know if you've ever worked in a company where the content team and the developers are always kind of at odds, right? Like, and really, if the CEO is a content person, then you use the content type tools that are really friendly for them. But if the CEO is a developer, then everybody's got to use like GitHub, right? And so this allows you to have your cake and eat it too. The content team gets to use the tool they want, the developers get to use the tool they want, and everything still works together, and you get this really nice, this really good workflow. Okay, so with all of that, I think now I have access. I'm in. It looks like we've got a tool. Good. So this one already has WP Graphical and WP GraphQL installed. So these are the plugins that you would actually create. So let me pull these up and share them in the chat. So this is WP GraphQL.
Yeah, those are our go-to required plugins, and shout out to Jason, who has been on the show before. So go back and watch his episode. I was just rewatching it last night.
Yes.
The Double Jason show. And basically this is just a GraphQL server for WordPress. And he did a lot of work building this up. Yeah, that's the one right there. And then he also got brought into the Gatsby team. So they're working full time to build this out even further. So everything going forward, the kind of joke in the WordPress community is we got a REST API in core right when REST APIs were going out of fashion, right? Mm-hmm. So we finally got a REST API and now like GraphQL. So there's not, this isn't in core, and you can build a Gatsby site with the REST API out of the box, no plugins or anything. But I personally support going towards GraphQL, and they're actually rebuilding all the Gatsby resources so that it won't use the REST API anymore. It will always require GraphQL to be installed. So this is a pretty good first step, install GraphQL and graphical. And if you go in the admin area now, there's a little graphical place, and we could just kind of cruise through that and see some of the pages and posts ahead of time.
Nice. Okay, so I go down here, and there's a question in the chat. So you had mentioned that we couldn't install these plugins through the regular plugin way. Was that just because of the goofy permissions on my site, or is there another reason for that?
No, there is some reason why you can't put graphical in the plugin repo, and I don't actually know the reason. So I'd have to guess. I know I knew at one point, and I completely cannot remember because the question comes up for me. But I think there's a low-level reason, something it's doing maybe that isn't allowed, or maybe something it has included. There are a lot of restrictions on what you could put in the public repo, or it might just be he didn't want to do it until version 1 was out. I can't honestly remember, but we need to go through GitHub.
Okay. Yeah, and Jason Ball is in the chat right now, and he's saying that they're not there because developer-friendly plugins tend to fare pretty poorly on .org, and that's fair because .org is definitely targeted toward, like, WordPress is in general is targeted toward somebody who isn't a developer and doesn't want to think about code. So putting a plugin that promises something and then requires development probably means that a lot of people would be frustrated. So keeping it in GitHub is making it a little more clear this is a developer-friendly thing.
Shout out to Jason. All right, way to deliver. We got all the answers today. I love
it. But yeah. So and he's saying that once they hit like a solid version 1, it'll go live in the .org plugin catalog.
Okay. Perfect. Cool.
All right. Well, so this part is great. This looks familiar.
Yeah. Right. This is familiar. If you click on pages, or posts plural, let's start there because there we could go
posts
into here. The posts or page. Yep. And if we go into the nodes there, we could see that we've got all the basic info we want, like the title. Now, one thing about WordPress is that it has this filter system. So you can get a title and content before all the filters are applied or after. And so this is what's selected under format as either raw, or if you click on format, you'll get 2 options there, raw or rendered. And we always want to choose rendered. So that's a really important thing. The excerpt, the content, the title in WordPress have this extra quirk. This is a CMS specific thing.
Okay.
But you can see now we've got our data coming.
So if I
won't look as
can you talk a little?
But if you select content, grab content as one of the fields in there, and let's set that to raw, and we might even see a different.
Okay, so we can see here's all the WP paragraph stuff, but if we go to rendered, it cleans that up. I get it. Okay, yeah. Cool, very cool. So that's basically like if I'm remembering how WordPress works, under the hood. So WordPress has kind of like metadata about content that helps WordPress describe to itself what should happen. Plugins use that, and shortcodes and things like that. So before it gets to the browser, WordPress is going to do I think it's is it just called like the content, where it runs these filters and like turns the content from the metadata into like browser friendly. Any browser can interpret this plain old markup. And so basically what we're doing here is we're saying we want it to be rendered because we want the browser friendly version, not the WordPress version.
I'll try switch computer screens here. Give me 1 second. Let's FaceTime start video. You're gonna get the upshot now, but hopefully this will be a better connection. Yeah, you're absolutely correct that WordPress has some filters that it adds onto it. And hold on, let me see. There we go. Get down on it. And third-party developers can also, via plugins, they could add things. So I could write a plugin that says, hey, after the end of every content section, add some code to share this on Twitter, right? So that sharing on Twitter would be something that might be added into a filter potentially. So if you're, this is going a little bit further, but if you ever need to edit the content from the database and you choose raw, if you're plugging it into like your own editor,
Yeah.
but most of the time we're going to have content. The other thing about this is that that means that on the React side, we're going to have to use dangerously set HTML because it is
Right.
giving us raw HTML. So if you're not familiar with that, WordPress developers in the Gatsby world, in the React world, we get real comfortably with dangerously setting HTML for the title and the content and all of that stuff, which you get to avoid if you're using some of the other systems out there.
For sure. And another note that came in from the chat, Jason Ball is saying that the rendered is the default, which is good, and that's public. With raw, we have to be authenticated because it could technically leak implementation details. So that's another thing to consider. So that means I think that if I uncheck this box, we still get the rendered version. So if we leave that filter out, actually by default, we'll get the right thing, which is good. I like that. You've made the right thing the easy thing. That is very much in line with my values. So nice job.
Yeah,
Nice job there.
New here. Very cool. Way to go, Jason.
I know that wasn't meant for me, but it still made me feel good. So
take it, buddy. Take.
All right. So okay. So we have now this GraphQL setup where we're able to load posts. So from here, what would we do next?
Yeah. So from here, we're going to spin up my first step in this is I want to duplicate this on the Gatsby side. So
Okay.
I want to be able to go into my local host graphical.
Oh, you just went, we can see your mouth moving. Oh,
site, and I would set up the GraphQL plugin so that I could connect my WordPress graphical with my Gatsby site. So I just spin up a basic default starter and install the GraphQL plugin. And let me see, I can.
all right. So let me pull this over, and we're going
Gatsby
to.
GraphQL is what it is.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run npx Gatsby new. Is there a starter you want me to use, or can I go hello world? Is that cool?
Yep. Just go with the default hello world. Let's start there.
So I'm going to do hello world so we don't get any of the extra stuff. And I'm going to put this into, let's go, WordPress Jamstack. Oh, I did that backwards, didn't I? Yes, I did. I'm going to do this one instead.
Mm-hmm.
So WordPress Jamstack. I think that's right. I can hear the fan spinning up on my computer. It's all like the desk is going to lift off now.
Oh yeah, running video and Gatsby code just down to bring down the greatest of machines.
I got the two computers going. We're still struggling.
Who would have thought just editing text would be so resource heavy, right?
I know.
It's that modern package life, It's a modern package life. So I'll just fill some space now while this is running. Basically, our first couple steps here are love it.
I'm sorry.
I love it. When you've got B-roll, use it, buddy. When you got B-roll, use it. Yeah. So the first couple steps are a little bit laborious. These will probably get easier as time goes on and more starters are created and things like that. But basically what we
Oh, we lost you again. You just went quiet.
that over.
So you're gonna have to say all that again because you went quiet as soon as you started talking.
Oh no. Okay. So let's skip to the next step. The next step is we'll install Gatsby source GraphQL, and that will let us basically connect our WordPress to our Gatsby. So we'll kind of start with step by step.
Okay, I'm adding Gatsby source GraphQL.
Perfect. And now we come into our Gatsby config file, and we'll set that up and point it towards our WordPress site.
This is not the site we wanted to be looking at. What is happening here, computer? Nope, not that one either. Why? Wow, it's opened like every site we've ever done on Learn with Jason is now open. Okay, here we go.
Let's connect WordPress to everything.
All right, so I've got the plugins, and so this one is going to be Gatsby plugin.
Yeah, you got it.
GraphQL.
Yes.
And then for the options, this part I don't remember.
Source plugin. Is it Gatsby plugin GraphQL or Gatsby source GraphQL?
Great question. What did I install? I installed Gatsby source GraphQL and then forgot what I was doing.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so options, I could tell you there's two that we need. One is, or three, I guess. Type name will come first. And that's what we're going. Yes, it is. Yeah, camel cased. And it's WP GraphQL, one word, capital WPG. And that's going to be what we put. Yep. Cool. And then the next one is field name. And that's the same thing, all lowercase.
Okay.
And the field name is where we're going to find all of our WordPress data. And then the final one is the URL. And then we'll just paste in that development site that we're using.
Okay. And so is it smart enough to know like how to get there? Or
if you copy that URL, we need to add /graphical to the end.
With an I?
Or GraphQL. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, just GraphQL. So this, from here, it's smart enough to know.
Okay, so let's start it up. And so it's starting. And let's see. Didn't say anything. But let's hop in and look.
If we did it right, we should now get WP GraphQL and all of our content there.
Yep, so let's grab these titles. We'll grab the content again. I want the date. And, well, something didn't go right. Because it's preserving old stuff. Let's get that out of there. Input ID. Oh, I did a post and not posts. Plural. Let's go nodes. And then we'll do a title. Hello. Who's that?
we had some non-Gatsby developers passing through. Hi.
All right, let's try this. Hey, look at that. There we go. All right, so you back? You're back. Okay.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, so we've got posts coming in. These are from GraphQL, but they're now loaded in my local Gatsby site. So, like, this is pretty straightforward, right? Like we just made this. It just works, right? And I think that's really exciting because now, like when Gatsby builds, it'll take this data and it will actually store that as like flat files so that we can power down the WordPress, we could password protect it, we could do whatever we need to do to lock that down and make it secure for the people who are editing the sites, but without having any impact on the front end of the website, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, and this is super powerful to have all of our data available here. The thing to point out, though, is that just because it has the ability to query it doesn't mean we have any of this in flat files. So we have to go through the process now of picking out what it is that we want to create pages, to create posts, to figure out the URL structure, to figure out all of that stuff. So at that point, at this point, it's still a very open-ended book. What I think is going to evolve, I'm working on, we didn't talk about this earlier, but a theme project where we take WordPress themes and port them over.
We're sorry, we're losing you again. Oh, you back?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay, cool. So you said you were really excited, you were working on something, and then you cut out.
We're working on building themes for Gatsby and WordPress projects, and we're trying to do more of the heavy lifting. And the Gatsby team itself, led by Jason, is trying to build Gatsby themes that are going to build out more of the content yourself, so that you won't have to do the process that we're about to manually do, which is figure out how to create pages, how to assign them a template, all that. So a year from now, building Gatsby WordPress themes will probably be a smoother process. Right now, it's still a bit laborious, but not any more laborious than working with any other content management system. It's
Definitely.
Just, now we have to go into Gatsby's underbelly, like into our Gatsby config or Gatsby node.
Yeah, we'll use
and
Gatsby
start
node.
Creating our actual pages here. So that would kind of be our next step. Yeah, nailed.
Thank you for the sub, Ryan. So one question that came through, Jason already answered in the chat, but I think this is important, so we should call it out. We didn't have to add any auth for this. So how does that work?
Well, thank you, Jason, for already answering that. A lot of this stuff is public by default. Basically, anything that you would get with a normal WordPress theme, we don't need to authenticate for. However, there is a JWT auth extension for WP GraphQL, which hopefully, Jason, we keep doing these WordPress ones because this is like my idea is I wanted to start with that one, but I think a little bit advanced for some folks who are seeing some of this setup for the first time. Where you would actually have to set up some authentication. And the cool thing about Gatsby is that you could have a user authenticate and pull in stuff dynamically, or you could hard code that authentication into your Gatsby app. Still some security concerns there. You got to be careful where we store this stuff, right?
Sure.
But you could have the server side authenticating for you in some instances too. But like for instance, if we try to query raw data now, I don't know if we're going to get that on our Gatsby side because we haven't.
Let's try.
We haven't authenticated.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Get out of here.
All right. That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you for the sub, Henry. I appreciate it. I'm ready. Let's make some pages. So maybe the first thing that we can do, the easiest thing would be like a blog roll, right? Like let's get all these and list them on a page. Are you frozen or are we having a staring contest?
Keep cutting out here, right at the important parts.
All right. So I think if we take our index page, it seems to me like probably the best place to start is to just list things on a page, right? Does that seem reasonable to you?
Yes, we could do that, but let's do that to start just to see it. But what I actually like to start with is using the create page API and actually building out the pages.
No, let's do it.
Creating them themselves, which is kind of a two-part process because we'll need a template too. But I like to start there.
All right, so we're going to start by getting we're going to use the create pages API in Gatsby. We use that by exporting a function, and then that's going to give us what? GraphQL and actions.
Actions, and then GraphQL, I think. No? Or is
I mean, it's a destructured object, so it doesn't really matter, but I like alphabetical. I'm down.
Yes. Okay, cool.
So then what happens next?
So we could go about this a few ways. I like to write my queries at the top.
Okay.
So if we do a query, and also, again, shout out to Jason, because I wouldn't have gotten both Jasons a lot of this before. Let's create a const called get_pages. All caps is the naming convention I tend to use.
Okay.
And then we'll set up a query that, okay, so this is going to be a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, because the issue is that WP GraphQL is only going to get 100 things at a time, 100 pages. Now, in our simple site, it's not really an issue, but the way I tend to write this is kind of in a recursive mode. So I'm looking at some completed code. I'm going to try to figure out if we could simplify this.
Okay.
Just assuming that we only have maybe 5 pages to gather to get through a little bit more simply. So let's start there, and I'll see if I could simplify this on the fly.
Okay.
All right. So the query we're looking at is we want to go into pages, and let's start off getting any. Yeah, I don't know what level of depth I want to show. Let me show you one thing. If we go into pages, one of the things you could select.
Lost your audio again.
That I will definitely go into the co-working space next time here. I'm gonna skip over. Yeah, you're just grabbing the simple stuff there. Let's just set up a query where we're getting WP GraphQL pages, nodes, and then like you have the title and the slug.
And what do we even need? Like, if we're creating pages, like we don't really even need the title, right? We need the slug and like the ID. Do we need anything else?
Yeah, so that's a good point, because what we're going to do is we're going to create the page and then pass the ID or the slug down into that page. And in the template is where we'll query all the code and all the fields that we actually need. So I do generally the ID and or the page ID, and maybe URI sometimes can be helpful if we're building links. So we probably do want the URI as well. Let me see, what is it that I generally pass in with context?
Are slug and URI going to be equivalent? That might be a question for Jason Ball.
Yeah, I don't remember the answer to that offhand. Hopefully he's in there and gives us that.
Slug and URI are different. All right, Jason, putting you on the spot in the chat. Can you tell us how? Now we wait.
Now we wait.
Okay, so the page ID comes from WordPress, and the ID comes from Gatsby. Maybe. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So the page ID that's exactly correct.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So what Jason is saying is that the slug is like the individual page, but that could be nested under something else. Like, so if you had a website and a /about, which was like about the company, and then you had a staff like subsection and an about for about the staff, those might both have the slug of about, but the company page would be /about and the staff page would be staff/about. So that's what the URIs would be. So, okay, I get that. That makes sense. Okay, so it looks like these numbers should end up being like, these will be unique. These look like they're definitely unique. And either way we go about it, all we're really looking for here is something to have a unique lookup for the page, right? So really any one of these, probably not the slug, because the slug could be a duplicate. So page ID, URI, or ID could all be used for what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything that we could query it by that's going to be unique on this side. So,
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference?
I'm trying to look up what I pulled it by here. Let me see. Page. I think I'm using the ID is what I've been using,
Okay.
which again is Gatsby specific. I'm sorry.
It
WP
turns out
graph.
it's not. Jason just corrected me on that. So the ID is, all of this data is coming out of WordPress, is what he just said in the chat. So I was incorrect about that. But this is a nice unique ID. So if we take this and we can leave that part out, come back over here, and we can just drop this straight in. And this is one of my favorite things about GraphQL, is that you're able to test your queries in the browser, see the result, and then once you're happy, you just copy paste it right into your code, and you know, bada boom, bada bing, you're done. I don't know why. No, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, so now we have a query, so we need to execute that query, and I'm going to do that by, we'll get the result equals await GraphQL, and we'll run the get pages. Okay. So from here, what should we do next?
Okay, so assuming that this is all of our that these are all of our pages. Sometimes I like to test this. It's a bit laborious, so maybe we won't do this at this stage. But I would do is map over each of these, and then I'd create that. I'd call create page.
Okay.
So if we map over the results, and that should give us an individual page.
Okay, so this is going to give us result.data.wp GraphQL.pages.nodes, and then I'm going to use for each since we don't need to return anything, and we'll get a page. So in here,
Brilliant.
then we can run create page. All right, and it's been a while since I've done this, so from memory, oh, I just lost you.
Okay.
You're back.
Okay, so I would generally do two things. First, I like to console log out here just so that we can see when we're building. And I'd say like create page and then give it the ID or something like that right before we call create page. I like that, especially when you have a large site build out. It's nice to know where you are in that process.
That's a good idea. So let's stop and start, and we'll see those pages get spit out right now. Okay, so here we go. We've got our 3 pages, and we've got a URI and an ID. And so the create page.
Cool. Now create page is going to take a path, a component, and context. So the path, this is where it's helpful to have the URI. Yep. And then the component we haven't created yet, so we've got to do that. And then the context we could pass in. I like to actually just pass the whole page in, so it'll get the URI and it'll get the ID, but really all we need to pass in is the page ID, technically.
Okay. Yeah, let's stick to just what we need. Just this is a personal quirk that I've developed because I've noticed that like whenever information crosses a boundary, it gets harder to decide later if you can get rid of it. So I like to only include what you need so that it's more immediately obvious that like if the data is there, then you know that you needed it somewhere, instead of passing a whole object and then saying, well, did we use both of these or just one? So that's nitpicky, but that's my reasoning. And so then,
I love that logic. That makes a lot of sense. The complete opposite of what I generally do, but it makes a lot of sense.
so let's create a page template. So I'll import React from React, and we can do page template is going to, it will get some data, but for now, we're going to export default page template. All right. And this is going to get, or wait, what does it get? I'm forgetting now.
Yeah, so this will get our data, which will be our page ID.
Does that
it'll
come
get
in
data WP.
Is it in data or is it in context? What is it? My brain is breaking down. We have to do a query, right? Is that right?
Oops, sorry, I'm cutting out here. Yeah, you pull out a GraphQL from Gatsby. That looks correct. And then the query is going to be GraphQL. So here is where we need to make a query and pass an ID as a parameter. So I would do something like query and then $ID is equal to the ID that we passed in. Yep.
Okay, so actually let me do this then. I'll set up an ID. We'll do query ID, and then is this going to be a string?
Yeah. It's an ID, not a string.
Okay.
Like instead of string, it's just capital ID exclamation point.
Okay. So then we've got this will be what gets passed in as our ID, and we can use it here to filter for our page. And then let's get the title and the slug to make sure that works. Perfect. So test.
In fact, we don't really need the slug here. We could just get title and content probably.
That's true. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Get just the content. Boom. Look at that. So that's beautiful. So we can take the pages part out. So I'll uncheck it down here. I love this Explorer. And then we can take this straight out, drop it in here. Okay. And now we know that this was set here. This ID will get passed to our page template, and we can use it as a GraphQL variable, or we can also get, I think it's page context is the prop that comes in that would give us this if we wanted to do something with it, but we don't need to because it's up here. So then this, once it gets executed, becomes data here. And to illustrate that, we can...
That's correct. Yep.
Let's dump it. This is my favorite React debugging tick. You just grab whatever you got.
Ooh, I like that.
Put this little buddy out there, and you've got a debugger. So we can then grab this. I'm going to use require.resolve to get... source, templates, page template. Okay. So this, let's see, we don't need to console log anymore. That should work. That should build us pages. So let's give that a shot and see what happens.
That should. Would debugging instead of outputting be possible in Gatsby? Yeah, there's a couple ways that you could export out the code as you want, whether you debug it, whether you log it directly to Gatsby, whether you put it in the console of the browser, or just put it on the page. All of those various options should work for you.
And then another debugging trick that I love is if you just go out here and type in like 404, it'll show you all the pages in development that are created.
Love that trick. Love it.
This is what is getting dumped out. Game on. So I think we're ready to make this work, right?
Yeah, let's just convert this into some H1 and a div with some text in it.
Okay. So we've got our, this here. I'm going to use a fragment. And then inside we'll do an H1 and it'll be data I'm going to do this. We are actually, let's destructure. We'll get the title and the content out of
Yeah, I like that.
WP graph.
Data.wp graph.
Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
now we can just use it like a template. It looks nice.
Now the thing is that this will work, but really we want to use dangerously set HTML. Yeah. And I believe we want to do it for both the title and the content. And yeah, you know the format here. Good for you. I often forget and have to go
I was like, this is right.
You're spot on. Yep, that looks right to me.
Okay, so we're doing this for both?
Yep. And maybe just for the sake of demonstration here, throw out a final div and just do a div with the content in it without dangerously setting it. Because sometimes it's the same, but I think it's helpful to see them side by side just to really stress that point.
Yeah, that's a great point. So here's our H1 with the title. Here's our dangerously set inner HTML. And this is the content where the HTML doesn't get interpreted because React, by default, smartly, doesn't parse user code. So we have to explicitly say, hey, we know that this is HTML and we are aware of the risks, and therefore we are willing to take that risk to render this HTML. So it's called dangerously set, but that doesn't mean don't do it. It just means make sure you know what you're doing and why. So now I clean that up. Look at us go. Look at us.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
I dig it. It's very, very cool.
So what, we're done. Like we ship this, right? That's a whole website?
Yeah, I think we just deployed a Netlify now and call that a day, build the client, and I think you're good. There's so a few things to mention from this point. One is that I kind of want to talk about something that's a bit of a WordPress specific quirk, which is if you bring up the editor now, if you log back into WordPress, and we look at that WordPress site and page in there, I want to point something out. So if you go into pages now and find our sample page, and we've got our block editor here.
Okay.
So there are certain styles, like if you come down and try to add a new piece of content, let's create one that is going to require some of the WordPress CSS. There's one called let's do cover. I don't know if you have an image nearby, but this is a pretty cool one. If we have, it's kind of like a cover image.
Here's one
where
that I made.
A larger, wider image might be good.
We're doing Gatsby stuff, so this seems relevant.
Perfect. Okay, so now type some text in here. And let's hit enter. And there's a shortcut. If you do / now, it'll let you search through all the different blocks that WordPress has. So if you do / and then button, and we'll add in a button here as well. And you could even just start typing the word button and it'll, yeah. Cool, so let's do a button of some sort.
Okay.
And we could just do a hashtag for the URL for now. And let's center align that button.
See if I can figure that out.
Yeah. You hovered over it. It's that.
Okay. Oh, this is cool too.
Yeah, nice. Cool.
Okay.
So let's click on preview to preview it in WordPress. And I just want to point out that WordPress is going to ship with the CSS to make a lot of this work. So what I'm curious is if we save this now to go back into the editor on that previous tab and click update, and we rebuild our site in Gatsby, I want to see how much of this gets pulled over, which is going to kind of lead us into the direction I want to bring out about this.
Okay. Okay. I see what happened.
So you see where I'm going here is that WordPress has a default style sheet that will give us some default styles to all of the blocks that it has out of the box. So if we go back to our WordPress site, open up that page, I want to show you this URL, and then I'm actually curious your opinion on this because there's a couple different approaches you could take.
This one or this one?
Yeah, this one right here. If you go to, I'm sorry, the one on the front end of the site, not the editor.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so if we go into view source code or view the DOM, there's a style sheet. And if you just start searching, I think it's, just search for .css to start. And there's one called, I think it's called block styles. And just start rotating through all the style sheets. One of them is going to have
Print.
So block, you were just on it. It's block library style.min. Next one.
Oh, here.
Yep, that. Okay. So if you want to get the default WordPress styles, you actually need to copy all this CSS over into your theme. So I've wondered what the best way to do this is. You could hot link it, probably not ideal. You could import it in. You could save this locally, but if WordPress ever updates core and changes some of the styles that it has, you're kind of in an interesting position there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to start with is if we just like do a really simple hack and include this in our, it should be an NPM package. It's part of an NPM package, but the styles aren't their own package. Jason, what's your thoughts on best way to get this into our site? And I also want to try it just to see what difference it makes.
So you said this is part of an NPM package? Do you know the name of that NPM package by chance?
There is an NPM package block library. My honest advice from Jason, don't use Gutenberg. Well, I respect everything this man said. Good advice, but I think it's block library from, yeah.
Okay, so I have a thought, and that is if our source includes styles, and those are where? Here.
Those are probably bundled.
Right. Okay. So here's what I think we can do. So let's add this. And I think what this will let us do is we can just hot link the bundled styles in this package so that whenever the package gets bumped, we have those styles. And that'll keep them up to date and not require us to like hot link or copy paste or anything. So if we look in here in the node modules, we've got WordPress, block library, build, no, probably build style, okay. Yeah, that looks right. So then in here, I think we
it's either this or theme CSS. I'm not sure which one because some of these might be for the editor side of things. We should try them both.
Yeah, let's find out what happens here. So we'll go WordPress block library, build style, and then style.css.
So another point from Jason as you're coding this out that it would be cool to pipe in the CSS through WP GraphQL and then just have that as something you could grab dynamically. That would be really cool.
Got to start the server for that to work. All right, let's see what happens. What would be really cool here is if there was a way to like scope this down. Basically, you could. Well, I don't know how you would do that without some pretty gnarly workarounds. But what'd be cool is if we could identify like which blocks were used, then you could dedupe the CSS as part of the Gatsby build process and only send in the stuff that you actually need. The reason that I don't use the terminal inside VS Code, to be completely honest, it varies from day to day. Like some days I do it and some days I don't. But hey, look at that, it worked.
Cool.
So that's the way that I would solve that problem, is because now we can update this independently with a regular update flow, and we don't have to worry about the styles or anything. And I think that Gatsby will do some dead code elimination here. I think that it will do CSS minification and stuff, but we'll see. Yeah. So and all that being said, like we can also, if we wanted to get like really particular, we would just come in here and know that like this is the class, and so we can go in and mess with this stuff to get it done the way we want. Because we do have some issues. Like that's hot linked out, so we would need to. This relies on the WordPress site being up and available. So there are a couple issues just with like what blocks are there. So as a developer, we might want to just eliminate this block or add a different one that uses custom styles to make sure that like the builds aren't reliant on the WordPress server.
Yeah, so this brings up some pretty big issues, which I think are worth addressing early on, which is one, like you said, there are some issues that we have to account for with images and making sure that we rewrite anything over to our local server. There is an argument of maybe folks shouldn't be using Gutenberg, the editor that's default in WordPress. However, my general take is one towards trying to help support as many people as easily as possible. So I actually think that trying to get the WordPress editor working with Gatsby is the better solution of the two. But there's a totally other approach. Let me see if I can get you this link real quick, where folks are trying to pull all of the block data as actual block data, as data, and not as rendered HTML. And then you basically rebuild a component for each block you have. Now, I think this is a bit laborious, and you have to duplicate everything that WordPress is doing on the component side. Some people say, I'd much rather do that approach.
Sure.
And I'm looking for a plugin and an effort that allows that, but there are.
So we lost you there for a second. How about now?
How about now?
Yeah, there
How
you
about
go.
now? We back?
Right.
Okay,
So
I'm back in time. Jason, I'm going to send you something on Twitter,
okay.
A DM here that you can maybe share out. That's a pretty cool effort to do this in a very different way, and worth mentioning at this point, I think. Because what's happening is that all your block data is getting saved as HTML, and it is possible to destructure that and get just raw data. So this project here, I met Peter at Gatsby Days in LA, and they're basically building out a way so that you don't get any block data. You would just get the raw data, then you could build your own components. And so
cool.
This is a whole larger discussion that we're not going to have time to get into here, but I do think it's at least worth bringing up this much here. And Jason's pointing out that ACF is another way to do it. His video, if y'all haven't, go back and watch the Jason and Jason show where Jason Ball comes on and goes through how to use ACF, because that was something that that they did together. So I didn't think it was worth us repeating today, which is why I wanted to show some of the Gutenberg stuff.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, so this may not be like, this will be perfectly fine. So there are challenges with whatever way you do it. The nice thing about this one is that it's just going to work, right? Like you are giving the trade-off is you are now beholden to whatever WordPress does with its style. So they could arbitrarily break your site by updating the package. So that's something that you need to be aware of. But the plus side is that we included one file in our page template, and I'm going to actually move that. So let's take this into a layout file. And what I'm going to do here is just build a really simple layout. So we'll go with children, and I'm going to do it as like, we'll use a fragment, and then I'm going to set up a header. That header is just going to have a, or we'll just do a link actually. We'll do a link to the home page, which means I need to import the link from Gatsby. I'm going to rely on auto formatting to fix that. What's going on? Why doesn't it like this? Oh, link to my WordPress site, Jamstack WordPress site. Close that link. And then down here, we'll add a main, and that will get the children.
Nice.
Right? And then we'll export default layout. Then in here, we'll just import that and use it. Import layout from components layout. And then instead of a fragment, we'll use our layout.
Just drop that layout in. Like the way you work, sir.
And now we've got a very simple, but still we get the styles. And now when we build out not just our pages, but our posts, we'll be able to actually link to those. So let's go back. Let's see. We've got 10 minutes. Do you think we can deploy this thing?
Let me show you something else here.
Okay.
Before we move forward, let me show you one other thing that's really important here, because WordPress has, if we go back into WordPress, into the admin area, and there's two ways to get into this, but if we go under appearance customize, WordPress has a way of determining what shows up on the home page.
Okay.
And this is going to get a little bit, if you go homepage settings down there on the customizer on the left. So see how we could have either latest posts as our homepage or a static page. So right now I have my homepage set as a static homepage. And if you close out of here and go back to WP Graphical.
In Graphical.
And we look under all of our pages, you'll see that one of them is called is front page. So if you select is front page over there in the Explorer.
Is front page, got it.
And shout out to, again, Jason Ball for adding this. We can see that the home page is set to be, it's not going to be, the slug is home, but the actual URL we want is just /. So what we need to do is in our WP, or no, in our Gatsby node file, we need to write a little conditional statement and say, hey, if is front page is equal to true, then go ahead and set the URL slug to be the root file.
Okay. Get that out of here. Why am I getting? Okay, here we go. So Jason Ball is saying that if we get the URI, it should auto do that for us, which would be really cool. Let's see.
Oh, let's check that out.
No. Is that the right one? Did I get the wrong one? No, I think that's the right one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Don't worry about it, Jason. You're batting like what, 950 now? It's all good. Yeah, so we will how do we want to do that? Do we want to do that in here? Like we'll just import?
No, I think we want to do that in our actual Gatsby config. Because when we generate the page is when we have to create what the URL for it is going to be.
Okay, so in here,
I'm sorry, Gatsby node. Yeah. So before create page, we have to say
I get it.
page URI. Yep, yep.
Okay, so if page is front page, I understand. I did not. I was like only marginally following where we were going, and now I get it. So let's do that.
Now the only thing is I think that this might potentially conflict with having a source pages index file.
Well, it could. That could be interesting. Let's find out.
It does get interesting with multiple pages.
It does get overridden. So let's see what happens.
But if you go and you just delete that file now, I think that we also still have, we still have that page. So if you just go into your source and delete the pages index, it should automatically show up. But again, this is just all some weird WordPress specific. Well, it's probably other CMSs too. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess we have to.
Honestly, it might have been. Just because it might have not pulled that at all because it was a duplicate page. There we go.
Yeah, I wasn't so sure of the underlying workings there. So there you have it. Like now we've got some of the basic stuff set up, but like if we go into WordPress now, you don't have to do this, but we change it to be all your blog posts on your homepage, then that would not necessarily have our blog posts show up here. So what I'm really excited about is how intelligently can we build Gatsby?
Lost you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. How intelligent can we build Gatsby?
Yes. How intelligently can we build Gatsby to know about WordPress's intricacies and check for it? And that's stuff that I'm working with the team of developers, building some WordPress themes to see how far we could take that. And at least for now, if you're doing it on your own, these are some things to take into account. So it's not going to be like you change every little thing in WordPress and it automatically is reflected. But I think that this is some of the core stuff. And from here, I think we could ship it with the time we have. But from here, the next step would be to build some menus, because we could pull in all of our menus in GraphQL, which is really powerful. You can't do that in the REST API, by the way, by default. So
yeah, let's look at that. So we've got our menus, nodes.
Yeah, before you go into here, actually go into appearance menus, just so we could see it on the WordPress side first. Yep. And so we only have one menu at the moment, but you could have multiple menus in WordPress. And it has this whole interface. So however many of these build, we can get access to them inside of our graphical.
And so I can come in here now. Let me collapse all this for a second. We don't need those anymore. So menus, nodes. I'm going to get my menu items, nodes, and then we'll get the title, target. What do all those mean? Nope, that's not what I want.
Title, I think you want
label.
Title is going to be the actual title attribute applied.
Okay, so let's get all of those out of here, and we'll just stick with these two that we need. Perfect. So this brings up a question. Is there a built-in way to manage the URL rewrites here?
Yes, our built-in way is called using vanilla JavaScript to write a query.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, no. So I picked this up from Jason Ball as well. Like, it's just helpful to have a helper function somewhere in your Gatsby that will rewrite your URL. Now, something that's interesting as we build more and more complex stuff and eventually add Apollo to the mix, we have our URL that's used possibly in Gatsby config to set up our GraphQL source, but then we also might need it on the Apollo side. So what I've always wondered, Jason, is
What great timing for that to. Nope, lost you. Right as it was good. It was such a cliffhanger. What I've always wondered is, and gone.
they got me right at the right time there. What I've always wondered is how do we write a variable that we could use in Gatsby Node and in like our front end JavaScript, because it's a good idea to save our URL in a place that we could access on both. And I've always wondered how to do that, and I'm not sure. So I always end up having a variable front and the back end.
So you can do this a few ways. The way that I think it typically gets used is to do metadata. So if you add site metadata here, then you can query that on the front end, and you can import this file anywhere in the site to get at that data. But in our case, I think what we can do is we can just rewrite to relative, because we know that we're at root, right? So we can just replace that URL basically. And
Jason pointed out you could query it directly from WordPress too. So anytime we need the URL, but we do need to at least tell it in one place what our URL is. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, for this, no, a rewrite is the most basic thing.
What would that setting be? General settings, URL. Yeah. All right. Perfect. I'm going to include that. Get general settings and URL. And then we'll have our menu. Or wait, is this? Oh man, I can't remember how use static query works. Let's just console log it and find out. And this is how I wait. Oh, it's got to be under WP GraphQL. Okay, so we'll do this. And now, theoretically speaking, we'll have a console log of the menu, WP GraphQL, menus, nodes, menu items, nodes, and there are our menu items. And then we get our general settings in the URL. So from here, I can get the URL, and that will be menu.wp-graphql.general-settings.url, and then I can get the menu items, which will be menu.wp-graphql.menus.nodes. Oh god, this is already going so poorly. Menu items. I would make this better. Did I typo something up here? I did. Menu items, nodes. Woof. Okay, that's fine. That's okay. So then we have so now we have the menu items. But then I can map on these. So I get an item, and for each of these, I'm going to return the label is going to be the item label, and the what was it? The URL.
URI.
URI or URL? Did I do that wrong?
URL.
Okay.
Nope, you're right. It changes up a little bit, if that's not confusing for you.
Killed and cooked. So in theory, that just works.
And
so,
I think you might want a / there for replace with. Yep.
I don't think I do, because it looks like this doesn't contain a trailing slash, but these will have one. I think.
Yeah, I think the reason. Well, let's try it. Maybe maybe my reasoning. Yeah.
What I think probably in a perfect world, what we would do is we would like use no like a path actual URL generator to join the paths. But since we're short on time, I'm just going to kind of fly through this and get it done so we can publish this.
Perfect.
So let's get menu items dot map, and then for each item we're going to put out a
Get that link going.
link to item.url, and then we're going to do item.label, and yes. Yup. Look at it go. Nope, not quite. Oh, because the blog is a special thing. We got to actually build that. So then we've got our sample page. We've got our test page.
Cool.
All right. Okay, that's working. It doesn't look great, but we're going to keep it. Let's build a blog page. And for this, we're going to get React. We're going to import GraphQL from Gatsby. And then we're going to have a blog.
Yeah, so what I was going to say here is you're typing is that we get into an interesting scenario with some hybridization where, like, to build this blog page, maybe we do have to build a Gatsby template, a Gatsby page, or you could try building a blog page in WordPress where you list all your blog posts on that one page, but then you get into pagination, you get into some more complex things. So the listing pages, at least at this approach, I'd be curious, Jason Balls in there has an approach. Listing pages I tend to create as actual Gatsby pages, and the actual pages or posts, whatever the static page is, let WordPress handle that. It's just been my general take on that.
So to repeat that, what you're saying that what I'm doing here, this is kind of what you would consider to be your recommended best practice.
Yeah, just because it can handle pagination and some other things a little bit better. Again, if you really are dealing with, Gatsby is so sweet and beautiful for the smaller sites where maybe there's not too much content, or you could really control it and you're refined, you could build around certain metrics and you don't need to count on too much more. You could do it all within WordPress. But for archive pages like this, I think it makes more sense to do what you're doing.
Don't need that. Okay, so here are our tests. Toss those in here. Save it up. That's going to give us data. So our data is going to be, let's get posts. It's going to be data.wp graphql.posts.nodes. And then what we can do here is we can do nodes.map, or wait, posts, whoops, post.map, post, and then for each of those, we want to return a thingy. So the thingy that we want to return is going to have a key that needs to include the ID, so let's also include the ID. And then we're going to add a link. This needs to be the URI, not the slug. So we'll go post URI, and then we want to do post title, and we'll make this into let's call it an H2.
And technically, we should probably be making that dangerously set. Yeah, once again.
Good call. That's a habit that I have definitely not built. Let's get this here, and then we can get rid of this one. All right, going nice and fast. And then for the excerpt, I'm just going to add a div. We'll dangerously set again. I'm going to copy paste this.
Although I think excerpt does not have markup. Let's do it as dangerously set anyways, but I think by default usually the excerpt is just going to be text.
This one is showing me a paragraph.
Great. So I don't know what I'm talking about. So definitely.
All right. So we've got. Is that going to work for us?
Yeah, I'm curious.
I did not import my link. Error ID is not defined. Where am I getting an ID? Oh, post ID. Log.
Yep.
Boom. Okay. So then,
Cool.
last step before that'll work, because this is going to take us to the actual blog pages, but not correctly. So we need to go into our Gatsby node, and we can just do honestly the same query more or less, but we're going to do it for the posts.
Yep.
We'll leave out the is front page because we don't need that. Okay. And
now what I'm doing is generally I'll create 2 different actions. I'll actually break these up and store them in different files. But I think that the way we're doing this here, yeah, you could just go straight to posts and have 2 separate queries here. But technically, yeah, we could take out that front page stuff.
Okay.
Now, this is in WordPress by default. Our posts are going to be site/post name. But what you might want to do in Gatsby is do blog/.
Good call. So that'll give us a blog/post URI. We're gonna duplicate this post template. So let's go in here, copy paste. We'll call this one post template, and this one is going to be almost exactly the same, except I'm going to call it post instead, and then we'll just take these 2, give them a capital P. So we're pulling in data GraphQL post.
Yep.
Otherwise, everything is exactly the same. So I'm going to stop and restart. And Chris Gravinsky has a good call out. You should use dangerously set inner HTML even if you don't get markup, because WordPress encodes special characters. And so that way we would, even the HTML entities would show up right. So here are our pages.
Sorry, Chris. You're correct.
Okay.
Cool.
So this. Wait, what went wrong? Oh, I know what went wrong. Our blog page needs to include that blog call out.
Yes. Now, one thing I'll point out here is that building the blog as a page worked if we don't have pagination. But if we do have pagination, it makes more sense to build your blog archives as part of your Gatsby node, where you circle over each blog post, and for every 10 blog posts, you create a new page, and so those are like statically created onto each one. Might be a better long-term approach, because what's going to happen is we're just going to have 1,000 posts here if we had a super long blog and no pagination. So that could be like a next step for folks. But
I'm doing a little bit of hacky layout stuff here to get us
like it
a little bit of separation. And then another thing that I'm going to do, because we've got here we go. Because we've got this one set, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to filter for the item URL does not equal home. And that way what'll happen is we'll only get the home, blog, sample, test, right?
Yeah.
Look at that. We have built a WordPress-powered Gatsby site, and I want to make it a thing. So let's get init. Let's deploy this thing. So we're gonna get init, and so now we have, these are our files. These all look good. So let's git commit, or let's add everything. Git add everything. Git commit Gatsby or WordPress powered Gatsby site. And then it is co-authored by, comfortable giving out your email?
Right. It's email@zachgordon.com.
You're going to get signed up for all the spam.
I'm getting all the things.
All right, we're going to use Hub to create this thing.
Put Jason on there too.
And then we're going to git push set origin master. All right, now let's get into the Netlify CLI. So I'm going to Netlify init. And this is going to connect. We're going to create and configure a new site. I'm going to put it on my personal. We're going to call this Jamstack WordPress. And we're going to use yarn build. And we're going to use the public folder because that's Gatsby's target build destination. Okay. Let's get in there and watch it build. I love it when this works on the first try.
This is so cool. Something else we could do in the future is there are some webhooks that allow you, every time you save something in WordPress, to ping Netlify and let them know to rebuild. And that's something that's really handy. There's a plugin. Maybe while this is building, if you go back into the WordPress site, let's give a shout out to
one.
Yes. Yeah.
Where am I going? I'm lost. Here. Geez. Okay. Plugins.
There we go. Yeah. If you go under plugins, there's one, the Gatsby toolkit here.
Oh.
And
this is already set up.
Yep. And what this will allow you to do is basically it will, there's a bit of a setup process involved, but you get to hook the webhook in, and it will update your deploy every time you change something in WordPress.
Nice.
So super powerful and kind of the final important integration technique.
Cool. By the way, what's up, Twilio friends? Thank you so much for rating. We're actually kind of coming up on the end here, but we did some really cool stuff. So we took this WordPress site here, and the posts and pages. We took all of that. We added GraphQL, WP GraphQL, built by Jason Ball, who's in the chat today, so say hi. We used that to then hook up to a Gatsby site, which we did using the Gatsby source GraphQL plugin to hook up to our Gatsby site. And then we used GraphQL to read out our WordPress stuff and built out pages, which led us to this beautiful work of art over here. And we are now deploying that site, which is live. And like nothing, we have built a fully live WordPress site powered by, or a Gatsby site. So Jamstack. This thing is going to be, not just because we don't have anything on it, but like it's going to be really fast. It's going to be really, we've got those styles coming in. So we've got really, really powerful stuff going on here. This took us, including technical difficulties, including joking around, including talking for a few minutes. This took us all of like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is a really, this is a simple case. We're not getting into pagination. We're not getting into, edge casey things, but we were able to build like a proof of concept WordPress site. We migrated it from WordPress proper over to a Jamstack WordPress site using WordPress as a headless CMS. And I think this is it's so cool. This is so powerful. With that, anything else that you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think that, you pointed out the really good stuff. From here, what you're going to see with WordPress is you can do a lot to design the sites within WordPress itself. but it's going to be about what plugins are you using, and do they ship everything you need to your Gatsby site? And then eventually the next step is going to be making this dynamic. So if we want to add some comments, having those right back to WordPress, or you're choosing a third-party content mesh comment system, which I'm really trying to encourage more and more WordPress users to step out of the monolith system and into the content mesh. That's my big education push over the next coming time until it takes place. So I think a lot of folks already watching are in that mindset, and you can just find a way to wedge WordPress in. And I think it's a great option. We're seeing more and more CMSs out there, but
Zoom just decided you were done. They were like, "Oh, you're about to recommend WordPress, dude. I don't know." Oh, that timing, like the comedic timing of these cutouts is really good today.
I'm glad me and my Canyon tiny home living could accommodate. But I will say again, in case we get cut off, Jason, I just want to thank you a ton. We came in a little blind. I'd hoped to prep a lot more, but I think that this was super helpful, and I'd love to come back if it works to keep going, because there's so much more we could explore with all of this. So shout out again. Thank you so much for this. I do have some courses on Gatsby and WordPress, and you can get to all that. Follow me on Twitter. This is kind of the niche I'm focusing on, is WordPress in the Jamstack, WordPress in JavaScript. And
get in here, make this work. Here's headless WordPress and Gatsby. And so there are a couple questions in the chat about, like, I don't think this would be great for frequently updated sites. It's more of a comment than a question, but I think we should talk about it. The thing about these builds is this build, so we deployed this site and it took 1 minute, right? So for the vast majority of websites, a minute or two to get a site up and live on the internet is not a big deal. That's as long as it would take for you to publish on WordPress and clear your varnish cache and wait for that to hit the edges. So when you're looking at like how long it actually takes, there are very few sites for which exact up to the minute publishing is like critical, like business critical. And so I would encourage everyone to challenge that assumption that, like, because you have to build, how long does it take for caches to clear? How long does it take for your updates to get through? Like if you're using something like CloudFront, for that cache invalidation to actually hit, right? So like when you're doing that sort of work, that is something to keep in mind. But I'm with you on this, Zach, because I think it sounds like there's so much more that we can do here. So let's talk offline, but I think we should come back and do a series of these and dig into some of the different use cases around using WordPress in the Jamstack.
I love it. And yeah, the deploys is a good one, but that's going to keep getting sped up. You make really good points, and there's ways of intelligently designing a site so that maybe it's pulling in the latest stuff live. The guys who built Static Fuse, they're even experimenting with how we could check to see, hey, is what's cached and already developed the same as what's currently the most live thing? So maybe
you got cut off again, but that's all right because we got the point. Zach, thank you so much. I feel like this is a good time to wrap it up. Everybody, stay tuned. We've got some really exciting stuff coming up. I haven't updated the schedule, but we have really good. Oh man, I wish I would have updated the schedule before we came on today. Stay tuned. I'll tweet about it from the Learn with Jason Twitter, LWJ Show on Twitter. Let me just pull that up. We will also tweet about it from my Twitter. I'm Jay Langsdorff. This is me. And yeah, stay tuned because we've got some really cool stuff. I've got Rachel Andrew is coming on the show. Thor from Stripe is coming back on for a series on how to do e-commerce and take payment on the Jamstack. We're going to bring back Nick DeJesus, who's done some really cool stuff with Jamstack. We rescheduled earlier this week with Khalil Stemler, so we've got some episodes coming up on Apollo Client version 3. Just so much cool stuff is happening. Definitely stay tuned. Thank you so much for coming in. Zach, thank you so much for teaching us today. We'll see you again soon. Chat, stay tuned. We're going to raid, and we will catch you next time.